How do I? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1974, I came out for the first time to the Philippines for a UNESCO conference in the Tagaytay city. And there I met a very young Malaysian. And that Malaysian, we took a fancy to each other. And he insisted on a song which everyone is popular in Malaysia. It's called Rasa Saya Hai. Is that right? So every day for 4 days, he insisted that I sing this song called Rasa Saya Hai. And I think by the end of 4 days, I did master it somewhat. And I lost track of him. And 40 years later, he was the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Abdullah Badawi. So if anyone knows Abdullah Badawi, I would like to see him again after 40 years. If anyone knows him in the audience, please tell him I'm still alive. And I'd like to see him and sing Rasa Saya Hai to him, if I can remember. The Barefoot College. Now, for the next half an hour, I would like you to suspend all what you have learned in school and college and just listen to a bit of common sense. If you agree with me, at the end, let me hear you say it. But this is something which is totally, totally different from what you have learned in school and college. The Barefoot College is a college, this is the only college in the world which is built by the poor, managed by the poor, and controlled by the poor. And by the poor, I mean less than $1 a day. And the most unique thing about the college is that we made a difference. We recognized the difference between literacy and education. You know, Mark Twain said, never let school interfere with your education. School is where you learn how to read and write. Education is what you receive from your family, from your environment, and from your community. So what you're going to see today is education with a difference. We started the Barefoot College 40 years ago, and we redefined professionalism. Who's a professional today? Someone who has a combination of competence, confidence, and belief. If you agree that that is the definition of a professional today, then a water diviner is a professional. A traditional midwife living in a village is a professional. A traditional bone setter who fixes bones in villages today is a professional. So these are professionals you'll find everywhere in the world, including India and including Malaysia, if you go to the remote villages in Malaysia. So the Barefoot College is 500 miles southwest of Delhi. It's a very, very small village of 2,000 people, but this is where the college started. This is a new definition of illiteracy. Today, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but it will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Do you agree with that? If you agree, then you have to redefine education today. And we are redefining it in the Barefoot College. Why barefoot? Because millions of people around the world walk barefoot. It is symbolic of people who live of traditional knowledge and skills and wisdom which are still alive today, but not recognized by universities and colleges. It is a college because it's a place for learning and unlearning. It's a place where the teacher is the learner and the learner is the teacher. And it's the only college in the world where we don't give certificates. Because certificates actually ruin livelihoods. When you give a certificate, the moment someone from a village gets a certificate, he leaves the village looking for a job in a city. So the moment you give a certificate, you're actually encouraging migration. So we believe that traditional knowledge and skills and wisdom should be applied, should be respected, should be recognized as a skill that is still alive today and needs to be used for the development of their own communities. So we applied that on a large scale in the Barefoot College. The Barefoot College was built by a barefoot architect. He still can't read and write today, this man, but he built the college for me at $1.50 a square foot. It has not collapsed. It's still there since 1986. And it's been built by 12 other people who can't read and write. They made the blueprints on the ground, and they built the college are using traditional materials, traditional knowledge, traditional skills. When we came up to the roof, I went to a forester who had a degree, and I said, what should I put on the ground? The forester said, no water, rock under the ground, nothing will work. And then I went to the old man in the village, and I said, what should I put? He said, you put this species and that species, and it will work. And today, it looks like this today. So, moral of the story, don't believe a forester. If you want to do something, work practical on the ground, go to the old men in the village. They're the ones who know it all. We went to the roof. The women said, clear out. All the men clear out because this is a technology we won't share with the men. So they waterproofed the roof for me, using traditional knowledge, traditional wisdom, a bit of urine, of cow's urine, a bit of jaggery, I don't know what else, but it hasn't leaked today. That's what the Barefoot College looks like today. It's a college where we believe in traditional and people's technology. You asked the old man what they did for water, and they collected rainwater. This was before the engineer turned up in the scene. So now we collect rainwater, and we collect over 400,000 liters of rainwater if it rains, should it rain, and we are in the middle of a desert. I've been there for 40 years, and sometimes it does not rain for 5 years. So when water is very precious. So when it rains, if it rains, should it rain, we collect rainwater. And they are sitting on a rainwater harvesting tank of 400,000 liters. It's the only college which has got optical fiber cable. We're already in the 21st century, video conferencing, and that is a telephone exchange in the Barefoot College. It's got a speed post service of the Department of Post. So if you should happen to buy any handicrafts from Thilonia, in 7 days anywhere in the world, this little post office will send you the item. We believe that education with a difference has to be applied. 60% of the children in India don't go to school in the rural areas because they look after goats, they look after sheep, they look after animals. And we have only schools at night for them. So the night schools of Thilonia started in 1975 with kerosene lamps. Very poor. Those kerosene lamps are now using solar lanterns. And over 7,000 children go to these 150 night schools. The beauty is that every 3 years, we have an election. I don't know what's happened to it. Am I doing it wrong? Yeah. 7,000 children between ages 6 and 14 elect a cabinet and a prime minister. Today, the prime minister is 12 years old. She looks after goats in the morning, but she's prime minister in the evening. She has a cabinet. This is the cabinet meeting going on of the children. She has a cabinet, Ministry for Education, Minister for Health, Minister for energy, and they all monitor and supervise their own schools. Because all the children, the night schools, are girls and not boys, because boys go to the day school and the children come to the night school, and all the girls, most of the girls come to the night schools, all the prime ministers have been girls, much to the regret of the boys. So we said the boys have to contend with being Speaker of the House, but you can't be Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister, 6 years ago, went to get the World's Children's Prize from the Queen of Sweden. And the Queen of Sweden was absolutely delighted and enchanted by that Prime Minister on her left. And she asked me where this young girl, 12 years old, got her confidence from. She looked so confident as if she's been in Sweden all her life when she hadn't even left her village. So I asked the Prime Minister, I said, where did you get your confidence from? And she looked at the Queen straight in the eye and said, please tell her I'm the Prime Minister. Where the percentage of illiteracy is very high, we use puppetry for communication. Where there's no radio, where there's no television, where there's no newspapers, the only way to communicate with people is using puppetry. This puppet, his name is Joachim Chacha. He is 300 years old. He knows everything what's happening in the village. For me, he is my psychoanalyst, he's my doctor, he's my lawyer, he's my teacher, he's my donor. He solves all my problems for me. Whenever I have tension in the village, I call Joachim Chacha, and he solves it all. He's a legend in the time. So, if my attendance goes down, and the teacher is fighting with the parent, Joachim Chacha brings the whole village together and says, kiss and make up, and the attendance goes up. So he is a very important figure for the Barefoot College, because he is the commentator of what's happening all around. These puppets are made by recycled World Bank reports. The World Bank hates it, but we give one puppet to the World Bank Vice President saying, remind you how to get to the rural poor. Today, I'm sorry, I'm not fixing this properly. Over 100,000 people go to these puppet shows, and it's a sensitization program of awareness building. Why you should not beat your wife, why you should send your child to school, what are the laws of the country. This is all interactive through the puppets. We have a community radio station where 50,000 people listen to all our radio programs, and it's all about village problems, village skills, village solutions. And this is all run by people from the village. We have a dentist, illiterate grandmothers who've been trained to be dentists. They look after the teeth of 7,000 children. They can't read and write, but they are fantastic dentists. And maybe in 6 months, after we get some assistance from Italy, they may be able to do a root canal. Can you imagine? Women today are acquiring skills which are only supposed to be reserved for men. This is a solar cooker made by 4 women who still can't read and write. Very sophisticated Schaeffler solar cooker. 60 meals twice a day we give through solar cooking. So if you should happen to come to the Barefoot College, you will get solar cooked food. Welding is being done by the women. And this clock, which is a very sophisticated equipment which turns the solar cooker with the sun, has been designed and fabricated by the women. The Barefoot College is the only college which is fully solar electrified. All the power from the college comes from the sun. And the first barefoot solar engineer is this priest from a nearby temple. 100 kilowatts of panels on the roof of the Barefoot College. For the next 25 years, so long as the sun shines, I'm fully self-sufficient in power from the sun. All my 700 lights and fans, my photocopying machine, my telephone exchange, my community radio, all works off the sun. We felt that to make fundamental change possible in a village, you have to train women. We are totally convinced that men are untrainable. Men are restless, men are ambitious, men are compulsively mobile, and they all want a certificate. And the moment you give a man a certificate, he leaves the village within 24 hours looking for a job in Kuala Lumpur. So why train men at all? Only train women. So this is our first barefoot woman solar engineer. We have trained over 100 now from 16 states of India, all women. They come, what is the criteria? She has to be a grandmother. She has to be illiterate. She has never to been to school and college. And in 6 months, using sign language, not the written or spoken word, we make them into solar engineers. I've always challenged people in India and all over the world that these grandmothers know more about solar engineering than any graduate from any college anywhere in the world of 5 years. They know about fabrication of solar lanterns, they know fabricating about solar lights, they're fixed lights. Marvelous. The best change agents, the best role models in the world, grandmothers. We went to Ladakh, up in the mountains, and we asked this woman what is the benefit they've got from solar energy. And she thought for a moment and said, "It's the first time I can see my husband's face in winter." Can you imagine? Minus 40 outside, and they're only using candles as lighting. And solar light has improved the quality of life and changed it beyond imagination. So we are doing solar lighting in the deserts, and just by providing light in these deserts, they are generating income, and over $100,000 of handicrafts have been sold only because solar light has come to these villages and they are working at night using solar light. So we went to Africa. The demystified, decentralized model we used in Africa. So between 2004 and 2012, we went and covered the whole continent of Africa. That is the light they use in Africa. Unacceptable today, 2021, 2013, you have this sort of light in Africa. So they walk for miles just to get 5 liters of kerosene. So what did the Barefoot College do? Instead of using kerosene, candles, torches, and torch batteries and diesel, you put solar light. We bring the whole community together. We ask them how much they spend on lighting. We get the whole community to agree how much they're willing to pay for lighting, and they're willing to pay what they already pay for kerosene, which is between $5 to $10. And then they have to sign and saying they will agree, and then we choose the grandmother. Big laugh. Grandmother, ho, 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 what can she do? She's illiterate. But the whole process we go through, we take the grandmother for 6 months, and we have a big, fantastic agreement with the government of India that if I should choose a grandmother from any part of the world, the government of India gives the airfare and 6 months training costs to bring them to the Barefoot College. So we have 40 grandmothers from 10 countries every 6 months. The village controls the community contribution every month, so the money stays in the family, stays in the community. We have trained over 600 grandmothers from 64 countries around the world, and not one grandmother has let me down. Can you imagine? Not one grandmother. The Minister for Education in Sierra Leone was once driving down back to Freetown, and he saw this village fully electrified. He goes back, walks in, and says, "What's the story?" So the community says, "These two grandmothers." Minister says, "Grandmothers?" These two grandmothers went to India and back, and they've solar electrified the village. So the minister goes straight to the president. "Do you know there's a solar electrified village in Sierra Leone?" He didn't know. So half the cabinet next day went and saw this lady, Nancy Kanu. And then he summoned me and said, "Can you train me some grandmothers in Sierra Leone?" I said, "I can't do that, but if you can build me a barefoot training center, we will do it." That is sorry, I think, can you operate? Yeah. Sound, please. The sound is missing. Have you got the sound? Sorry, there's something. Should I put it on again? Sorry, technology letting me down. Women every 6 months come to the Barefoot College, and they sit on a table like that and they learn solar energy with their hands. They all speak to each other, but they don't understand a word because they're all speaking Jola, they're all speaking French, they're all speaking English, and they don't understand. But the body language is great, and they all, by the time the 6 months is over, it's a large family. This So we will show you how this is a true story about ordinary heroes. This is about very simple rural women in Africa. From the Congo to Senegal, from Mauritania to Mozambique, from Liberia to Tanzania, from Sudan to South Africa, a quiet revolution is taking place. Illiterate and semi-literate rural grandmothers who have never left their villages in their lives are proving the impossible is possible. By the hands-on approach, they are baffling high-powered engineers, universities, donors, development planners, and paper-qualified experts by demonstrating incredible sophisticated technology skills and exposing the fundamental weaknesses of the formal educational system. Without using the written or spoken word, they have come to India to be trained in 6 months to be solar engineers. Unlike the university and other based training centers that are all theory and no practice, it is not surprising these women know more about practical installation, fabrication, repair and maintenance than any paper-qualified, certified solar engineer after 5 years. These women represent the profile of everyday rural Africa, from poor agricultural communities, housewives, daily wage laborers, midwives, shopkeepers, all now recognized and respected leaders in their own communities. They have no knowledge of theory of mathematics, physics, or electronics. They have no idea of the names of any spare parts and have never heard of generating power from the sun. But in 6 months, using only sign language, they can install a solar unit on the roof and fabricate a solar lantern and shame any paper-qualified solar engineer into silence. What is extraordinary is that they have solar electrified each house in their villages, all on their own. As a result of 12 women being trained in India as solar engineers in 2011, the President of Sierra Leone has constructed the first barefoot training center in Conteline in Africa. It was inaugurated in March 2012. 12 barefoot women solar engineers trained in India are now training 150 solar grandmothers from all over the country. When the 6 simple, rural, illiterate solar grandmothers returned to Burkina Faso, they were received as heroes. 4 cabinet ministers, the UNDP resident representative, and the entire national press were there at the airport. The Prime Minister received them. The barefoot approach believes the management, control, and ownership of the technology must lie in the hands of the poor communities. They must take all major decisions, like how much they are prepared to pay as a monthly contribution, and who among the poorest of the poor women should go for training as a barefoot solar engineer. When the target is the poorest of the poor, earning less than 50 cents a day, it is unreal and practical to talk about business models. The partnership model is by far the most sustainable model. Poor communities in all these countries in Africa have agreed to pay what they now pay for kerosene, wood, candles, torch batteries, and diesel. Depending on the economic status, they have agreed to pay between $5 to $10 a month per solar unit, even in the least developed countries. This is a fundamental breakthrough because nothing should be free. The barefoot approach does not believe in issuing certificates or diplomas after training. The certification should be done by the community themselves. That is why we believe men are untrainable. They are restless, ambitious, compulsively mobile, and they all want a certificate so that they can leave their villages looking for a job in the city. None of the nearly 246 illiterate grandmothers trained as solar engineers who have solar electrified a total of 13,200 houses from nearly 32 countries all over Africa have left their villages. So what are the universal lessons we have learned from training poor, illiterate rural women as solar engineers in Africa? Lesson 1. Any illiterate rural grandmother from any part of Africa can be trained in 6 months in India
to be a confident and competent barefoot solar engineer?
Yes, me, I feel proud because solar engineer is good to lady. Now I'm feeling good because I'm original training in the solar engineer.
Lesson 2. Sensitize the community first by involving them in taking all major decisions, and only then bring in the solar technology to the village, a genuine community-based bottom-up approach. Lesson 3. Keep all urban-based paper-qualified engineers away. They have neither the vision nor the courage nor the faith to select and train women as solar engineers. They also do not have the communication tools to speak as equals with poor communities. Lesson 4. No certificates should be issued. None of the grandmothers from any country in Africa have asked for them. Solar electrifying each house in the village is certification enough. Lesson 5. To reach the very poor, only a bottom-up partnership model can work. The top-down business model for the very poor in Africa has failed. The cost of solar electrifying villages by nearly 246 women solar engineers all over Africa is close to $3.9 million, less than the amount being wasted on 2 millennium villages, on brick and mortar, on salaries and consultancies, on travel, on publicity and preparing studies and papers. The solar grandmothers as of today have solar electrified 13,200 houses in 195 villages. They are the only solar engineers trained in Africa. The first, technically and financially, self-sufficient solar electrified villages in the whole continent of Africa, indeed the world. On a rare visit to the Barefoot College, when he also spent the night, His Holiness the Dalai Lama blessed the women solar engineers on the 13th of February 2011.
That's secret. That's secret. So those illiterate villagers, even grandmother, is physically also a little bit old and illiterate. Yet, through training, is engineer, proud, self-confidence and dignity. Wonderful.
By 2013, the Indian government has brought rural women from Sudan and Southern Sudan, from Liberia, Senegal, Zimbabwe, Ivory Coast, Togo, Comoros, Madagascar, and Zanzibar. Almost all the least developed countries in the whole continent of Africa will be covered, saving 2 million liters of kerosene from polluting the environment and thousands of tons of wood from being cut, depleting the already fragile forest. There is no question. The barefoot approach is here to stay. What Mahatma Gandhi said comes to mind. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win.
So we are interested in taking grandmothers from Malaysia. How about that? Do you think it's possible? Wow. And we are also in the Pacific. I think Megan will tell you more about partnerships here. We're all over the world now, in 64 countries around the world. When His Holiness came, I'll end with it, he said, now that the Barefoot College has shown what it does in practice, let's see if the professors and the experts can make it work in theory. We are doing everything wrong. We are not following any rules. And yet it seems to be working because the barefoot model is demystified, is decentralized, and decertified. We made a puppet of His Holiness. He loved it. So I'll end here with a quotation from the Upanishads. I am rich and well born who else is equal to me. I will sacrifice, I will give, in that I shall rejoice. Thank you.